The Marco Polo Bridge Incident, also known as the Lugou Bridge Incident by the Chinese, was an incident that sparked the Sino-Japanese War. The incident started in July 7, 1937 and ended in July 9, 1937 at the Marco Polo Bridge, which is 16.4 kilometers west of Beiping, also known as Beijing. It started in July 7, 1937 when the Japanese units stationed at Fengtai crossed the border to conduct military exercises without warning the Chinese prior to doing that. The Chinese National Revolutionary Army, or the NRA, believing that they're under attack, fired a few shots and the Japanese fired a few shots. Even though no one was harmed during that encounter, a private from the Japanese units was missing. Private Shimura Kikojiro failed to show up to his post on that day. Later that day the Japanese demanded permission to search Wanping town for their missing private, but Qin Dechun 29th Route Army commander refused and said that they would conduct the search. Although Private Shimura had returned to his unit, the Japanese wasn't happy about being denied the right to search Wanping and began to besiege Wanping. Later that night, several Japanese soldiers tried to breach the walls of Wanping but were repulsed by the Chinese National Revolutionary Army. An ultimatum was issued by Major Kianeo Ichiki. At 2 a.m. July 8, the mayor of Wanping, Wang Lengjai, went on a solo journey to the Japanese camp to negotiate. However, the negotiation was futile, and at 4:45 a.m. the Wang Lengjai returned to Wanping, and in 4:50 a.m. shots were exchanged between both sides. That marked the beginning of the Sino-Japanese War, the war that would lead to the deaths of millions, the Pacific Theater 4 years later, and the destruction of the Japanese Empire in 1945. Colonel Ji Sing-wen led about 100 men of the 29th Route Army to defend the bridge at all cost. After a brief hand-to-hand combat with the Japanese, they were overrun by the numerically and technologically superior Japanese. When the Chinese reinforcement came, the Japanese were kicked out of the bridge by the Chinese. Even though the Chinese were able to successfully repel the Japanese off Wanping and the Marco Polo Bridge, it was a strategic failure for the Chinese because they've revealed their weakness to the Japanese and lead to the Japanese go on a full-scale offensive on China. During that same year, a musician called Mai Xin written a song called The Sword March to honor the 29th Route Army and the soldiers that held the Marco Polo Bridge. Aftermath of the battle. The all-time high tensions caused by that incident are unable to subside, like the Mukden incident, which led to a full-scale Japanese invasion of northern China. With Beiping and Tianjin captured by the 8th of July 1937. Then in Shanghai during the 9th of August, the Japanese lieutenant came speeding in a car up to the gate of Hongqiao Airport. As he was stopped by a Chinese guard, the lieutenant attempted to drive past the gate. The guard stopped him again, and Isao Oyama shot and killed the guard. Other Chinese guards returned fire. This event sparked an all-out offensive towards the eastern part of China by the Japanese, which led to a 3 months bloody war in Shanghai, which resulted in the Japanese capture of Shanghai. China didn't achieve their first major victory until the Battle of Tai-er-Zhuang in 1938.